for you than the ones that, like you said, that are stuck in those buildings. So it's just that. And then, I mean, take for instance, like was it Aldi's? They buy, or they, do contracts with farms, right?
Yeah.
And basically they have a set price because, I don't know if you've ever been to Aldi's, but their milk is really cheap. So those farmers are actually losing money because they're selling it so cheap. They're not getting a chance to actually make money between the ups and the downs whenever they can only sell to like these one company, because that's how their contract is written, and then these companies want it to remain at that price.
Yeah.
And then, I mean, it's not even just that. Like, there's, let's say, for instance, like horse people, the way you make money is basically by having a horse that's really good at shows, really good at pulling, or really good at something or racing, and that's where you really make money on horses. It's the same thing with cows. I mean, your money is, you can make good money by selling a bull's semen if you have a really good breeding bull. And because, I mean, some people pay you over $1,000 per one shot of sperm from a good breeding bull. So, but whenever you're sitting there selling your meats and stuff at really low prices, say to like Sam's Club or some other company like that has big chains, they're losing profit. They're not getting that chance to make all the money that they can. And then you got to think about all the hurricanes, the flooding, and stuff like that. And, not their insurance doesn't necessarily pay for it all. Yes, they probably do have farm insurance, but it doesn't cover their complete loss. So they're still going to bite a part of that off on that, which is why I think the government needs to step in more. And instead of letting a lot of these farms close, the government should buy them, and the government should keep them up and operational until they can find somebody else to take it over. But, a lot of this stuff is really expensive. Farm equipment is not cheap.
Not cheap at all. Plus all that land and seeds, and you got to think about it, even with harvesting, even a certain amount of harvest is always lost. Because let's say you change fertilizer, and like even, I was looking up certain farmers, like certain land, after you harvest it for like a couple years in a row, you can't harvest it. You got to let it like, you can't, let's say like you grow corn for like 4 years, you got to change it to like green beans or something, because the nutrients from the soil have been robbed from it. So now you got to grow something else for a couple years so they could the nutrients could come back.
Yeah, I mean, that's how it is with all the fields for the most part, is that you need to rotate them and either put in different plants that only take certain things in and out, and then you keep rotating them back and forth, or you have to actually let the field sit idle because you ended up taking too much out of it. I mean, I see that a lot where they don't actually have anything planted in the fields because they're just trying to let it get back to its original state. But, I mean, this brings us into a good topic of Idris Elba. He was doing a podcast.
10 episodes with his wife.
They were talking about climate and stuff like that. They want to actually make the world better. He was talking about, like, he wants to have kids, but he's afraid to do it right now because he doesn't want to bring his kids up in a world that he's not sure can sustain itself.
Especially with this climate control. That was the most of the podcast was about how we could all affect climate control and actually change it, because the more temperature raises, that's why you're seeing all these hurricanes affecting. That's why you seeing a lot more diseases, and that's why you see a lot more like deaths and stuff, because with the more and more climate control go up, the hotter and hotter it is, and the more the ocean get hotter and raise, and the more the ocean get hotter and raise, the more likely for tsunamis and hurricanes to form.
Yeah, I mean, that's why I feel like a lot of the stuff that we destroy, we actually need to go back in and plant stuff. Like, I feel like they should basically help, or a lot of people really need to like build their own gardens, help plant trees. Like, we could actually do this as an entire world. Like, I mean, we could actually go into these deserts and stuff like that and plant plants and trees and stuff like that can actually handle it, and it could actually help better our climate. I mean, it's like was it Brazil, the Amazon rainforest? Yeah, that's a big issue, is because that's where a majority of the air comes from. And yet here they are, and they destroy thousands upon thousands of acres every single year. I mean, even this year.
Just for, like, soil and farming, I'm like, we are really going to be soon where we have to buy oxygen just to survive.
Yeah. I mean, that's a scary thing. I mean, that's why I feel like, you know, a lot of this stuff, we need to come together as one world and try to figure something out. Like I said, you know, I mean, we could plant trees in deserts and it'll actually supposedly help change the desert climate, and it'll actually make it to where it'll rain and have more.
Well, not only that, I feel like I liked your idea before where it was like plant trees at the top of like skyscrapers and stuff so that the ocean could collect and release different things instead of all the pollution at the top of the air.
Yeah, I would say I actually seen that from China, where they do that in the cities. They actually plant plants on tops of the buildings and on the sides and stuff like that to help regulate all of the pollution. And I mean, that's a great idea. You know, I mean, we need to actually put more of that into effect. I mean, I know some cities and but a lot of, you know, contractors and engineers really don't care about that. They're looking at their bottom dollar and what they're going to make the most money on, instead of trying to make it beneficial to where we can actually survive this world for another 100 years.
Yeah, because not only that, you got to think about it. Most places, when big warehouses come, they just tear down that whole wildlife, and then they put a little. I learned that you have a certain amount of wetlands. If you tear down wetlands, you got to keep a little certain amount of wetlands. But most of that wetlands is just like a little ocean in front, so they look like, oh wow, look at that little lake.
Yeah, or all these ponds and stuff that they have to put in for buildings.
Yeah.
To catch all the runoff and shit, you know, not a lot of that's really good for us because a lot of it collects a lot of bad pollution.
And not only that, you got to think about it. Think about deers and stuff that used to be in that area that grew up and raised in that area that no trails for that. Now a big warehouse tear down his whole house. And imagine if he was like, what's it called, hibernating, and then he wake up and he like, that's why you starting to see all these bears and deers going to like land, and you're like, I never seen these many animals and near people. Well, first off, you tear down a whole land, and second off, like if you build too close to them, they like I forgot where, but like bears literally starting to stop hunt certain animals and just go to the human trash cans.
Yeah,
and then like literally, yeah, they get put back in the mountains, but then they found their way back to the trash can because it's just easy to go to somebody's trash can than to hunt.
Yeah, I mean, another good way to help fight everything would be like a lot of our stuff is built out of, you know, non-renewable stuff, basically. I mean, you think about it, you cut down a tree. I mean, that tree doesn't grow back. We actually have to replant a tree. So, I mean, you know, there's ways to get around it. Like, there's homes and stuff, like Hobbit homes, that you can get prefabricated plastic pieces, and you can actually, instead of having your house above the ground, I mean, it is above the ground, but they actually put dirt over top of these forms, and then you can actually have like gardens, and you can put grass back over your house and all that kind of stuff. And I mean, you know, that not let alone just cuts down on power use, because then you're going to be not have the energy consumption because your house isn't going to be as hot. The ground is actually going to help your house stay cooler, so you're not going to be running the AC as much, so you're not going to need that energy. And you could probably even put solar panels in and to run that house, because you wouldn't be using that much energy to begin with. I mean, there's a lot of other things. Like, there's one company in the West, and they do houses out of bottles and tires. And they're actually really cool. I can't think of the name off the top of my head right now. I'll try to remember for next episode. But so they'll like take glass bottles and plastic bottles, and they take used tires, and they actually build these really cool houses out of all used materials. The only thing that they really use new is concrete, and they use some wood just for the framing and shit like that, but they also are built into basically mounds of dirt and stuff. You can basically cover the entire house with dirt other than the openings and shit. Usually one side of it is out, but they're really cool. And like I said, they're really energy efficient. A lot of them, they actually put greenhouses into them, so you can grow your own plants. They make it to where the sewage actually goes into your garden that's part of your house, so you don't have to fertilize your plants because you're fertilizing them with your going to the bathroom.
Yeah.
And, I mean, it's really cool. I mean, there's a lot of shit that we could do. Or even these 3D printed homes that we could actually use recycled materials to print 3D homes that are actually really cheap.
I mean, also starting to think that, like, I was thinking about your idea. Maybe we wasn't trying to supposed to have all these big spacious houses and rooms. Maybe our houses should have been a lot smaller, like how it was back in the day with the tents, where it's like the bare minimum stuff. How you have to move Because back in the like the ice age, they had to move. When the climate changed, they had to move with the animals where they could hunt instead of freezing to death.
Yeah, I mean, that's what I'm saying. Like, there's a lot of ways that I feel like we could actually change a lot of this, but I feel like it's not going to happen unless we all come together.
I'm down because, to a certain extent, I already could see climate control is real because it's starting to get hotter longer. Like in Savannah, maybe for a month you get a little bit cold. But other than that, it's hot 24/7. And then I had a friend who stayed in Pennsylvania. Last year, it didn't even snow. And Pennsylvania is known for snowing.
Yeah, I mean, there's a lot of places like that. I mean, like, I'd seen, like, you know, Washington, D.C. was getting a lot more snow than some of the northern states. And I was just like, that's really weird. Because, you know, I remember whenever I was growing up, I mean, that wasn't really something you ever heard of. I mean, yeah, they would still get snow, but not like they were there for a couple of years.
I mean, the climate control is real, and we need to solve the problem now instead of keep waiting. Because I'd rather try to solve the problem now, at least in 20 years. Kind of had a problem solved now. Keep waiting, and then we have to do something. Because when stuff has to get done, it always going to get worse, because then people going to feel like, well, I don't really care. I'd rather just keep doing it the way I'm doing it. But I like your idea of that house where it's like the dirt around it. Because technically, you could build trees and all type of stuff, and technically, like, bam, the more grass and trees we have, the more clean out the ocean be. And you never know. This coronavirus could have been solved completely by the more trees eliminating all the bad air.
Yeah, I mean, very well could have been. I mean, you know, there could be a lot of stuff that could be changed. Like, that's why, you know, I actually would like to be able to support a lot of these companies that go in and actually, you know, make concrete reefs, and they put them out to help try to redo all these reefs that are being destroyed by oil and oil spills. And, you know, a lot of this other stuff that they do. And, I mean, there's a lot of it that goes with it. You know, I mean, you think about it. Those reefs help cool down and help create all these animals and plants. And
not only that, but reefs also, from what I remember, reefs also kind of protect us because the waves break. They hit the reef first and get sulfur and then go to the land, compared to just going straight to the land and, like, hitting us super hard.
Yeah. I'm trying to think. There's a fish out in Florida that I know they're having a really bad problem with. I'm trying to think what the name of it is.
Catfish?
No, it's not a catfish. It's something in the ocean. But, like, basically it was a fish that was brought in from somewhere else. And these fish, lionfish, I believe. And they, basically, they have these little points on them. And they, if a lot of native fish to Florida can't actually fight them off. Because they have poison in them, and they were never anything there, so basically they're overtaking a lot of the population.
Yeah.
And they're taking away from all this other stuff.
So why was they brought there?
I mean, there was just pet fish. I mean, it's just like everything else. You know, that's why we have a lot of these rivers and stuff. You know, we have fish that are native to Asia, and they're here because people release them in the wild, and whenever there's a natural predator that actually takes them out because they weren't from here, then we ended up with a crisis.
So even when people flush their fish, technically, you think you just getting rid of it, you technically changing the whole ecosystem. Yeah,
potentially you could. I mean, that's the huge deal now, is because, like I said, there's a lot of invasive species. I mean, like, there's been all kinds of stuff. I mean, like, look at all the, say, for instance, like, out in the Keys in Florida, there's a lot of those iguanas and stuff like that.
Yeah.
I mean, they weren't originally there. And, you know, there's a lot of other little things. I mean, it's just everywhere and every little thing. And, you know, we're basically creating a worse thing. So, I mean, there are people who take alligators and move them around to places that they don't normally habitate. Like, I mean, they found alligators in the north, like real far north, like Maine and stuff like that in the lakes.
Wow, that is crazy.
And, I mean, sharks now, I mean, they're becoming more and more inland, too.
Yeah, I was starting to think, like, I think it was a shark warning in Savannah recently. I'm like, wow. Well, I know Savannah's the ocean, but I never heard of sharks being, like, in Savannah before.
Yeah, because, I mean, bull sharks and stuff, I mean, they've been really coming upriver. I mean, like, especially in Florida, I know they found them in a lot of the lakes and stuff like that they don't normally go into. But, I mean, again, we're also destroying a lot of habitat and a lot of reefs. And, I mean, especially with this algae shit. Do you remember the name of the algae that we're having huge problems with right now? I mean, it's been a couple years since I really started seeing it, but, like, it actually, like, destroys beef.